new sprint format, and Marc Marquez goes from hero to zero. MotoGP is back, and it's chaos. Hello there, Greg Haines with you, and it's our first weekend review of the season for the 2023 MotoGP World Championship. And what carnage and chaos and bedlam we had at Portimao in Portugal last weekend. The start of a new era, of course, with the sprint format, which sees qualifying take place on Saturday to determine the grid for the new sprint race on Saturday and the main Grand Prix. They line up in the same order, a little bit different there to Formula One and to World Superbike for the main race on Sunday. And what a situation it was. Absolute chaos. Way too many riders injured. Is it just first day back at school? Is it a coincidence, or is there a major safety concern, with a lot of people talking at the moment amongst journalists, fans, and of course, perhaps most importantly, the riders on the bikes themselves? Well, if you thought one Greg was bad enough, I am, to your shock and horror, delighted to announce that we have a second Greg with us for this week's show, and it's Greg Jędrzejewski. No, try again, Greg. We knew this was going to be a problem, didn't we? I've got it written down phonetically.
Yeah, we knew that.
Jędrzejewski. There we go. Greg Jędrzejewski from Polsat. And I can get the Greg bit right, but I'm sorry about the surname. I'll try better next time.
Hey, Greg. Happy to join you on the subject of MotoGP.
Yeah.
We spoke about it for ages, and now it is happening.
Yeah, well, we've known each other for quite some time. I think we met in 2014, didn't we? So I'm glad we're finally doing a podcast together 9 years later. But Greg, I'm sure lots of you will know him anyway on Twitter. He commentates MotoGP, World Superbike, and all sorts of other things. It's World Superbike for Eurosport, isn't it, Greg? And Polsat, of course, for MotoGP.
Exactly. Polsat, MotoGP, and World Superbikes for Eurosport. So happy to hear your voice and James' voice over the weekends that I join you for the Eurosport commentary.
Yeah, well, it must be a challenge. Talking of challenges, how was your commentary for MotoGP at the weekend? There was a lot of action, and some bad, some good, but what a start to the season.
Yeah, it was pretty... I was expecting that we're going to have fireworks on the first weekend, but I didn't expect such fireworks, especially with the person who's known for fireworks. And yeah, I loved it. I mean, I to tell you the truth, I love the new format. I mean, for sure, for people watching, for fans, it's great because you have 3 days of really exciting stuff, because on Friday you have to qualify. I mean, not qualify, but qualify for the Q2 or Q1. So it's almost like qualifying. Then on Saturday you have qualifying and you have a first race. And then on Saturday you have 3 races. So it's awesome.
Yeah, I have to say, you know, as this, obviously I was watching this at home as a fan, really, more than a commentator, as I would be with World Superbikes. And I thought it was great as well. And I felt that the sense of excitement that built all across the weekend through Friday, it makes those Friday sessions more important now as well. And I think that's what they wanted to do, wasn't it? Increase the overall spectacle and drag in more viewers, because let's face it, now in this new era, post Rossi and with things very different, they needed to spice things up. So yeah, interesting. There's a lot to talk about, Greg. Let's start. I think there's 3 main points, if it's okay with you, to focus on today. One of them is the Marc Marquez incident and the whole debacle there. Also the sprint format, of course. Quite split opinion generally, although we like it. There's some people who don't. And also the fact we have had so many injuries, several top riders all out of action. And of course the next Grand Prix is this weekend. Everybody is travelling as we record this midweek to Argentina for round 2. But let's start at the end, as it were, with those 3 factors. The Marc Marquez collision with Martin and, of course, with Oliveira. Let's have a listen to the various reactions of the commentators who were in Portugal. This is lap 3 of the main Grand Prix on Sunday, and it was absolute bedlam.
Marquez, he has absolutely slammed into Miguel Oliveira. Oh, Marquez, a massive mistake. Big mistake. He clipped the back of Martin, then he hits the side of Miguel Oliveira. It looks sore for him. He knows he's made a mistake there, and Marc Marquez has gone down and out. of the Portuguese Grand Prix.
¡Ay, se la ha comido! ¡Uy! Ha tocado a Martín y se ha comido Oliveira. Le va a caer una sanción a Marc.
Oh, he just gets it all wrong. All wrong. He did clip Jorge Martin as we first thought. And then as he clipped Martin, look at that. It just pitched him further forward. Absolutely slams into the luckless Miguel Oliveira. Nothing that Oliveira could do about that.
I mean, look at that. I mean, it's a big mistake from Marc. I think what you're witnessing is with Marquez, the bike's not ready to win. Obviously, he managed to get pole position yesterday. He was third in the sprint race, and he says he makes all his time on the brakes, but he's sort of flirting with the limit and overriding sort of on the limit, and that was a graphic example of it, just going a fraction over the limit on the wrong corner, and it ended in disaster.
So the words there of Ernest Riveras from DAZN in Spain. We also heard very briefly from Lewis Sotheby there reacting at the start of the clip, and from Matt Birt on the Dorna World feed, which goes out on MotoGP.com and various English-speaking markets all over the world. And also Gavin Emmett and Neil Hodgson, of course, former Grand Prix racer himself and 2003 World Superbike champion, and that's BT Sport. So, Greg, obviously you must have been getting just as excited as that happened. What the hell was going on there? I've never seen a crash like that for a long time. It was like a computer game crash.
Well, it was more or less like, less maybe, what happened in Barcelona a year ago with Nakagami.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I think that Neil really explained it pretty well. And also Marcus, during the post-race debrief, he said he was not expecting and he was not willing to overtake nor Martin and neither Oliveira. It's just that he had a huge front lockup that he tried to correct. When you have a lockup of the front wheel lockup, you release the brake, just not to crash. And when he released the brake, the bike was still turning to the right. He wanted to go to the left. The bike accelerated. He went past Martin, clipping his foot, and then he hit Oliveira. It was a huge impact. I mean, we know that firstly, Oliveira was supposed to go to Argentina. Finally, he's staying in Europe because there are some injuries that he would not be allowed to race with. So, yeah, I mean, it's madness. I mean, if it was only that problem, I mean, we saw on the first lap, Marcus was going bananas on the first lap. He was like, I mean, of course, he's like Neil said, he's overriding the bike because he knows that to be on the podium, to be in the top 5 or win the race, he has to give something extra. But the tires were not ready. He used, I believe, the hard front for the race. So the front tire with the wind that was howling in Portimao, the bike wasn't ready. I mean, not technically ready, but just tire ready. So, I mean, that was a huge mistake. I mean, you know, we must be happy and relieved that it's finished like it finished, because it could have been much worse.
Oh, I mean, I dread to think the injuries Miguel Oliveira could have sustained there. Horrible crash, wasn't it? To what? Just awful.
Remember Bradley Smith?
Yes.
Remember Bradley Smith, the last year's crash in Le Mans?
Yes.
First
off the start.
I mean, right after the start. Yeah. You know, it could have been like this. So we must be really relieved that it's just like this, that Marquez has a broken thumb. Oliveira, we don't know exactly what's going on. And, I mean, racing is racing, but, you know, you have to be a bit more careful on the first laps. I mean, it sounds like I'm old, but, knowing that the bike is not what you want. So, I mean, yeah.
Jorge Martin is very lucky as well, because it was very reminiscent, wasn't it, as to what happened with Loris Baz and Alex Lowe's in Indonesia recently at World Superbikes. And he broke his leg, Loris Baz. They touched, no malice. They just touched. I'm amazed it's not happened before, actually, with Leon Haslam in BSB with his leg dangle, and Toprak does it quite a lot. Remember, it nearly happened at Moss last year with Jonathan Ray. Nearly went over Toprak's right leg when he stuck it out in front of him in the braking zone. I'm amazed it's not happened before. But yeah, that could have easily been the same outcome for Jorge Martin. Okay, well, that situation, Greg, has taken another dramatic twist, because we've had a penalty going out for Marquez, which they accepted. And I have to say, I watched the interview in Spanish that Marc did with Izaskun Ruiz from DAZN in Spain. And I have to say, Marc took it on the chin. I thought he was really professional in the interview. He said, I deserve the penalty. I completely understand why it's been given. But now, bearing in mind what has since happened with the whole penalty situation and an appeal from Repsol Honda, and we'll get into this in a moment, it makes you wonder whether they were just happy to accept it, knowing at the time that he would probably miss the next race and not have to take it. But that's all changed, hasn't it, since then?
Yeah, it's madness. FIM made a huge mistake with the wording of the penalty, official wording in the document that they sent out, because the words that were used, that the penalty has to be done in Argentina GP. It was stated exactly Argentina GP.
So it wasn't the next race. So it doesn't even say the next race. It just says Argentina Grand Prix.
No. Yeah. So that created a whole mess. So right from the beginning, the journalists that were in the paddock, they were asking FIM for the explanation. So if Marquez doesn't go to Argentina, well, the penalty will have to be applied in the next race that he's going to race. Of course, we are talking about GP, not the sprint, because sprint is a different story. He has to take the penalty in the GP, not in the sprint race. So they were confused. I mean, the FIM was confused, and yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, they sent out. So
that's Tuesday, by the way, for anyone who's listening. We're recording this on Wednesday, so yesterday is Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah, so 2 days after the event, they sent out the information that due to the injury of Marc Marquez, the penalty will be applied in the next race that he attends. But that's not fully according to the rules. And so right before we started recording this, we received the Repsol Honda team statement on FIM penalty, and they're gonna appeal, which is a total madness, because they create a PR hell for them.
Well, yeah, let's have a look, because you've just been kind enough to forward this to me while we've been talking on WhatsApp. You sent this to me. So let's just see what this says for those of you who haven't heard this. So, news report, Wednesday, March the 29th, 2023, Repsol Honda team, statement on FIM penalty modification. So not on the penalty itself, but the fact, as Greg has just explained, that the penalty has been modified. I hope you're keeping up with this. So here we go. It's only a short press release, actually, one of the shortest we've seen for quite some time. In relation to the sanction imposed by the FIM, that's, of course, the governing body of Grand Prix racing, on Marc Marquez for the race incident that occurred at the Portuguese Grand Prix, the Repsol Honda team considers that the modification of the penalty consisted of a change of criteria on when the penalty should be applied, and that this modification was issued by the FIM 2 days, as you've just said, Greg, after the initial sanction was final and definitive. And that, in their opinion, is not in line with the current regulations of the FIM for the MotoGP World Championship. And then it continues, for this reason, the Repsol Honda team intends to use all the means of recourse offered by the regulations in force to defend its rights and legitimate interests, which it considers violated, some strong words here, as a result of the latest resolution adopted, and in particular has duly submitted an appeal before the FIM appeal stewards. Well, if we thought MotoGP was already getting more like F1 in terms of aerodynamics and the racing, I think it's becoming more F1-like in the law courts as well now as well.
I mean, Alberto Pucci is not going to be happy with what I'm going to just about to say, but it's just plain stupid. I mean, it's just plain stupid. For what he did, for the whole situation that was surrounding the crash, Jorge Martin injured, Miguel Oliveira injured, for what was going on in the qualifying sessions. It's just not okay. I mean, for sure, that's normal that team manager is going to fight for the team. But sometimes you have to balance whether it's going to help you or just take you down. I don't know.
Yeah, this reminds me of, I don't know if you remember, those of you who watched Formula One, back in 2002, they were just starting to introduce drive-through penalties in the pit lane. Montoya had one in Malaysia. That was the first ever. And also grid drops for next races. And there was an incident towards the end of that year. Monza, the Italian Grand Prix, Felipe Massa was racing for Sauber. And he came up alongside Pedro de la Rosa in the Jaguar in the braking zone for the Ascari chicane. And he moved over on him in the braking zone, damaged De La Rosa's car, took him out of the race. And so Massa was given a grid drop for the next Grand Prix, which was the American Grand Prix at Indianapolis. And Sauber, to get round that, took Massa out of the car and replaced him for one race at the time with Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Frentzen raced, and therefore the penalty no longer applied. It's reminding me a little bit, Greg, of that. It just seems like a mess, though, with the regulations. Marquez clearly felt I deserved the penalty. That's what he said. I got it completely wrong. It was a really bad error. Jorge Martinez said, I'm getting tired of this. Those were his words in Spanish. This has happened before, things like this with Marquez. I'm getting tired of it. So I don't know whether Marquez would agree with what the team is saying. Like you say, I guess it's their job to defend their rider, but it's almost as though they're suggesting, I don't know whether they're suggesting he doesn't deserve the penalty or they are arguing that it's not fair. You can just change the rules. I guess Repsol Honda are saying, if you've worded it badly, that's your fault. That's not our fault. If you want to do it differently next time, fine. But to take their point, Greg, I guess they're saying you can't just make it up as you go along. I suppose that's their argument, isn't it?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely like they are just proving that FIM made a mistake. And for sure they did. I mean, wording of the penalty was wrong. I mean, look, Celestino Vietti had a penalty applied this weekend for what he did in Valencia for not acting correctly with the black and orange circle. Yeah, so it was moved from year to year. It wasn't like the next race in the same season. It was these are two different seasons, and it was applied exactly here in Portimao. So for me, the FIM made a huge mistake. I mean, but the question is why? I mean, also, what really moved me was that we have the regulations, but they do not state for what crime you're getting this and that penalty. And Marquez was saying that, hey, we had a meeting on Thursday that for such a crime, I'm gonna receive two long laps. For the second thing, I'm gonna receive this. For the third thing, I'm gonna receive this. I asked Dorna, can you please provide me with the regulations that the stewards are applying to the riders? And I still didn't get it. It's Wednesday, so and I doubt I'm gonna get it. So it's just that we need clarification on what's going on what penalties are applied, because it wasn't just something that happened first time during this weekend. We had two other things that happened. One was the crash of Marini that took out Enea Bastianini.
Yes, that was in the sprint race, wasn't it?
That was in a sprint race, and it was like an example of when the penalty should be applied on Marini, because he lost the front, he crashed, he took out Bastianini. He's gonna miss Argentina. That's 100% sure, because he has a problem with his shoulder. I think he already had the surgery, and they didn't give the penalty to Marini. And the explanation that I got from Dorna, I was like, I'm sorry to say this, I was laughing my ass off. It was a joke. Let me find it somewhere.
So just to clarify, Greg, so this is this is a reply you've had directly, is it? From Dorna, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's just clarify, just before you read that, sorry to interrupt, of course, let's just remember the governing body is the FIM. They have their own panel of stewards, which these days is separate to race direction. Freddie Spencer, of course, multiple world champion, heads up the stewards panel, and then you've got Mike Webb in a separate entity altogether, which is race direction, all FIM-led, although, of course, it's very much, from a PR point of view, in collaboration with Dorna, who are the series promoter. So that's why Greg's mentioning Dorna here, because you'd have to go through them to get a reaction. So, Greg, sorry, I butt in there. What did they say?
No, it's all right. Marini crashed when he was trying to make an overtake that was not judged to be too aggressive. He simply made a mistake and Bastianini was there. So these are normally judged racing incidents. No, they are not, because it would be a racing incident if Bastianini didn't crash. I mean, and he did crash and Marini lost the front. It's like 100% penalty. But from the other side, we have the incident between Mir and Quartararo. The incidents that we see in racing, every weekend, that Quartararo went wide, Mir got inside, Quartararo closed the line, hit Mir, and Mir crashed. And Mir got the penalty for this. I wouldn't give the penalty to Mir. It happened before with, let's say, Pedrosa and Lorenzo. In Mugello, I guess that was a few years ago. It's just, stewards need to be very clear. And that's what we are missing in MotoGP for ages now.
It's interesting you say that, because when I saw the Joan Mir incident, I thought it was totally his fault. So it's quite an interesting difference of opinion we have there as well. Obviously, I'm speaking as a non-rider, as a fan, as a commentator. To me, it just looked like a desperate lunge. He came from so far back. I know that corner does encourage moves like that.
It's just that we need to find a difference between what Marc did and between what Marini and Mir did.
Yeah, I have to say, I do agree with that. I completely agree, because Marquez wasn't even trying to overtake. He had a problem. He tried to avoid Martin and then ran into Oliveira. He wasn't trying to overtake anybody, was he? But I agree. We need some sort of system in place.
But he was over the limit.
Yeah, completely over the limit and out of control, and he has to take a penalty. Surely he's not just taken two riders out and wrecked their races and possibly their season, but he's injured people as well, not meaning to, obviously, but he has. It just seems like we need some sort of system in place. If you jump the start, you get this penalty. Now that one is already in place, but if you jump the start, you get this penalty. If you exceed the pit lane speed limit, you get this penalty. If you attempt to pass, crash and take someone else out, you get this penalty. If you hit someone and take it can't be that difficult to put that in, can it? Surely.
No.
I don't know.
It's very simple. And until this year, it was pretty clear that if you crash and you take the rider out, you get the penalty. That's it. I mean, that's either it's going to be three places that you have to drop on the grid, or whatever, 5 places back of the grid, depending on the severity of the crash. I mean, come on, it's not that difficult to apply this, and just to show people, okay, if we have a situation like this, and to show the riders that it's clear, it's like this and this, and then there are no discussions. I mean, it's done and dusted. The other thing is the wording of the penalty for Marquez, that I think it's going to create a hell for HRC, hell for Marc himself, because the mess that it created in social media, and the polarization of fans, and the words that were used in the discussion on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, it's really scary, Greg. I mean, it's really scary.
Well, I would just say, what else would you expect from social media? You know what people are like there. But at the same time, Greg, but I know it just looks ugly, doesn't it? When people are arguing whether they should be penalised or not in appeals, when you've got somebody injured and on the sidelines as a result of this incident, which could have been so much worse. Okay, hold that thought, Greg. We'll come back to you in a second, because I've also been chatting with Michael Guy, my friend and sports editor of Motorcycle News in the UK, and he's sent us some messages in as well. Of course, Michael's been chatting with all sorts of people. MCN, There is one out this week, Wednesday the 29th of March. There's 4 double-page spreads there, so 8 pages in total. Insight from Michael Scott, Colin Young, Matt Birt, Neil Morrison, some tech stuff from Peter Baum, and also some BSB action from the test there. We'll hear more about that in a moment from Josh Close, and even some World Superbike insight from yours truly. And of course, those of you thinking, oh, he's only promoting MCN because he writes for them, you'd be absolutely right in thinking that. But Michael Guy's been speaking with all of those people over the last few days to put together the coverage for MotoGP. So I sent Michael a voice message on WhatsApp, got a reply, and I started by asking him what he made of the general feeling, what everybody else is saying in the paddock of all these incidents we've already discussed, but beginning with Marc Marquez, and really, who was to blame, what happened in that incident?
I think it was a mistake. I think he is in a position where he's having to override. He knows he's going to have to override. He would have been encouraged from his third place in the sprint race. I think that sort of result was all going to be difficult to replicate in the longer race, just from a tyre wear and just ability to ride at that level for double the amount of laps. And I think he knew that, and I think he knew that he had to make up for it and make positions, the most positions he possibly could at the start of the race, and he took risks. Look, it's not new for him. He is habitual with his risk taking. The vast majority he gets away with, but he does absolutely go all in, pushes the limit. So in a way was to be expected, just really unfortunate that he's injured. Miguel Oliveira is injured, and that's another 2 guys out of Argentina this weekend, which is a real shame, in addition to Paul Espargaro, who's looks to be making some positive recovery, and also Enea Bastianini with his broken scapula. I don't think that the sprint race really contributed to it. I think that sprint race felt a bit like, to me, like sort of first day at school. I think they've had quite a long off season. The testing is not as extensive as it once was. So I think by the time everyone gets there, there's so much hype and everyone wants to get a result. Even though it is a 21 round, 42 race championship, these guys are big egos, big expectation, a lot of pressure. They'll want to go out there and nail the result. And I think it's not dissimilar to what we see at real key important races. Look at the opening round of Showdown in BSB last year. There's a lot at stake and a lot of mistakes and a lot of made, and people got injured. So I don't really think I think these are the best riders in the world. I think they all want the same thing, and they are all pushing very, very hard. That is what it literally comes down to. I don't feel that the sprint race really contributed to it. Personally, I thought the sprint race was fantastic. I think there's a fair sort of few purists in the paddock that think it should all be about that Sunday and it should only be just the one race.
Michael, thank you very much. We'll come back to you in a second and we'll get some insight now from Greg. But yes, let's move on then to our second of the 3 topics today. We've discussed the Marc Marquez chaos. What about the new sprint race? So, as I said before, this is a format that started in World Superbikes back in 2019. As yours, Viegas, the FIM president, has said, they've sort of copied World Superbikes. Formula One's running a sprint format now as well at selected events. Greg, what's your opinion? I, first of all, would say I'm pleased it's at all of the events, because I find it a little bit confusing in F1 when some weekends you have one, some weekends you don't. It seems a bit random to me as to which circuit should have one, which should not. So I like the fact it's the same format at all of the race weekends. Of course, the grid is the same. That's different to World Superbikes in that you have a long race on the Saturday and then the sprint race is always on Sunday morning, and that determines the grid positions for the third race of the weekend. Different in MotoGP. What did you make of it? It certainly put a different feeling on the weekend.
Man, I loved it. I'm 100% for it. From the first information that we got that we're going to have the sprint race, it opened up the weekend. It's like Saturday is right now worth watching for the fans and for the people that are at the track. I mean, come on, you come to the race and then you have only a race on Sunday. Not fun.
Really,
watching the bikes going around.
I have to just throw this in because I love it too. I thought it was great, but there are purists out there, as Michael has just said, who are saying, MotoGP, the whole thing was, and Formula One for that matter, it used to be building up to the big race on Sunday. And there's also the argument of, can people commit their full weekend to sitting at home in front of the TV or their laptop or their phone watching on a Saturday? Personally, I like the format. But what about the people who think it should just build up to one big Grand Prix?
Man, I think that people will more likely turn on TV to watch the race rather than watch the qualifying or the free practice session number 4 that David Ahmed, I love you, David, that David loves so much and he misses so much. So, it's. I think that the first weekend showed that it's really good. That there is going to be proper racing from the first lap. The thing that many riders suggested is that we cannot make conclusions on just this first weekend because they spent in Portimao 2 days testing. They know the track. They have all the data that they need for the race. So we knew that it's going to be tight. We knew that it's going to be tight on Saturday. We knew that it's going to be tight on Sunday. Let's wait and see what's going to happen in the GPs that they don't have a data for, like Argentina this weekend. Let's see what happens when they have rain on Friday and then, let's say, half a day of rain and then sprint in sun or other way around.
Yes,
that's gonna give a totally different vibe to the whole weekend to racing. For me, I mean, maybe it would be wise, like in the hindsight, it's always easy to say. It would be wise to have sprint races only in Europe, just to check whether it works, and then give the teams and the riders a possibility to maybe change something. But that's my idea. But I am totally in. It's a perfect thing for MotoGP because we need to fight for the audience that has easy access to other forms of entertainment that are fast, quick, and right here, right now, as Eddie Van Halen or Sammy Hagar would say. We need to compete with other forms of entertainment, PlayStation, iPhones, the mobile games and everything like this.
Netflix, so HBO, Amazon, it's all this. I want it, and I want it. That's the thing that's changed, isn't it? Now it's not like people sit down and watch TV when it's on. You can watch it. You can watch what you want, when you want, from wherever you want.
Wherever you want.
Yeah, that on any device you want. I'm just going to bring Michael Guy back in very quickly, Greg, if I may, because Michael also talked about this as well, the fact that they are looking to change the format and make the whole weekend more of an attraction.
I think you'd be more inclined to tune in to watch the main race, having watched the sprint race the day before, without question, because it was great entertainment and you'd want more of it the following day. I don't really think you get that same buzz, that same excitement from a qualifying session, or at least the more sort of casual viewer wouldn't. So for me, it's a hit. 42 races seems insane, 37 points up for grabs each weekend. It's a lot of points. I think it's 777 points in total over the whole year, which is a staggering amount of points. So, and that will fall into the favour of people like, Marquez, Bastianini and Oliveira, who will obviously going to miss races and miss out on some big points, but there's lots of scope to get them back.
Very, very true. Thank you very much again, Michael. That was Michael Guy there, sports editor for Motorcycle News. And he's basically just mirrored what you said as well, Greg, the overall weekend format. And that's something they also need to focus on now, isn't it? The fact everything's on pay TV, or pretty much on pay TV all over the world now. You have lost those regular viewers. For example, when the BBC in the UK used to have MotoGP, you might have somebody who is waiting for the Antiques Roadshow to come on before an evening Grand Prix, and they happen to just put the BBC on, and, you know, they end up watching the Grand Prix, or they've left the TV on from earlier on and MotoGP comes on. That's what we've lost with the model of pay TV. So I guess it makes sense that you sometimes have to make changes. And also, looking back through history, look how many times the format has changed. We've had different point systems, different regulations with the bikes, with the tyres, different Grand Prix, different circuits. Things do change. People don't like change at first, but it's quite normal, actually, when you look back over the history of Grand Prix racing.
I think about the 4 strokes and 2 strokes. Remember the whole vibe in the paddock? It was like, oh my God, that's the end of the world.
Yeah, well, what about, I remember CRTs as well.
We know it.
You know, look at CRT bikes and some of the negative press that got. And in the end, that allowed them to make the transition through after the global economic crisis and everything else.
Exactly.
To the golden era we are now in.
Yeah, exactly. That's we always with Adam Bajek, with whom I commentate the MotoGP, always say that that was a brilliant move by Dorna to bring the CRTs, and that allowed other manufacturers to join the club, and it was a perfect move. With the sprint format, what needs to be discussed with the riders is what they already said in the debriefs after the Saturday and after Sunday, that they need to somehow find the time to work, because right now they have so many other activities, PR activities with the public, with signing sessions, etc., that they don't know how to fit those in between the sessions that they have with the engineers to set up the bike, blah, blah, blah. So that needs to be discussed, I guess. And that's what Aleix Espargaro said. That's what other riders said, that they just need to find the way to go through the weekend. But it was just the first weekend, so it was obvious that some people will like it, some people will not like it, some people will need to think about this. So yeah, like you said, no one likes the change, but when it happens, then sometimes it brings the good ideas, and I think that the sprint is a good idea.
Now, Greg, I'm always very cautious to make comments on safety-related matters, because at the end of the day, I'm not the one who's on the bike there, you know, putting my life on the line. However, a lot of people are saying, riders and journalists and fans, most importantly, perhaps the fans, that this new format is putting too much pressure on people. Michael Guy referred to it before. If you look at the first round of the BSB showdown last year at Donington Park, and we've seen it before with the showdown, absolute chaos with people under a massive amount of pressure. That was quite a different system. And of course, that's been changed for 2023. And BSB starting very soon, by the way. Don't miss that at Silverstone. They are testing in the rain at Silverstone as we speak. And they were also at Donington Park last weekend, and we'll hear an update from Dave Neal in a second about what happened there. He was on the ground at Donington. I have to say, Greg, personally, as an onlooker, as a race fan my whole life, bikes and cars, I don't feel the sprint race actually caused a lot of these problems, because most of these nasty accidents, Pol Espargaro's was in Friday practice and could have happened to anyone at any point, really. Obviously, the big one was the Marquez-Martin-Oliveira clash. That happened in the main Grand Prix. As you've already said, we did have the Bastianini-Marini touch early on in the sprint race. I don't feel that was because it was a sprint race, though, do you? I think it was just an early race collision. It can happen, can't it, when everyone's so bunched up?
I mean, racing is racing. It's not ballet, as Jean Zarco said. We are racing, not dancing.
Do you like ballet, by the way?
No.
I don't really either. This stuff like this happens. I mean, it's racing. There's going to be contact. The thing is that we need to think whether it's not too much sometimes, like with Marquez. He went overboard. I mean, regarding the safety, what struck me, because I think we're moving on to Pol Espargaro, right? Yeah, that's definitely something that needs to be discussed. The fact, I think, for me, not so much that he crashed or what caused the crash, but the fact that somebody can actually hit a barrier still, it's something that shouldn't really happen these days. Or do we need to just accept we're in a very, very dangerous sport, and freak accidents can do and unfortunately will continue to happen every now and again?
Yeah, the accidents are going to happen. That's 100% sure. But if the riders are telling the organizer for the last 4 years that there needs to be a change with the gravel traps, that the gravel is too big, it doesn't slow down the bikes, the track does something. I didn't talk to Miguel Praya about this, but I need to call him maybe later on today.
Miguel, of course, who is essentially the boss, isn't he now, of the Algarve circuit?
He's more or less the boss. Plus, they were asking for the air fences right where the crash happened, and it's not there. It means that we need to discuss it a little deeper, because the accident that Paul Espargaro had, it was on the outlap. He lost the rear, which happens when you are pushing on the outlap and the tire is not ready, it's too cold, and you go over the hill. The rear slid, threw him off, and he was lucky that the bike didn't hit him, that the bike went a bit to the right and he went a bit to the left, because we would have a repeat of what happened to Lee Salom in Barcelona.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the thing. We need to listen to the riders. I mean, I know that sometimes riders are moaning and saying stuff that are a bit political or whatever, but in terms of safety on track, we need to listen to them, because they are riding those 300 horsepower beasts, and they know what's going on. So, yeah, I think that definitely, like with the penalties, exactly with the safety, we need to listen to the riders and have it pretty clear that we need to provide them with the 100% of what we can do to make them safe. Because this sport, they are riding all the time on the limit, and the mistake do happen. We are humans, riders are humans. And, you just miss the focus for half a second and you brake 5 meters too far. And that's it.
Well, that's scary.
Yeah,
well, I think just to go back to what we were talking about, I mean, we know there's always the danger. James Whittam always says this. You can have a narrow place like Cadwell Park in the UK, or you can have the wide open runoff areas of somewhere like Qatar. And there is always the danger of being ridden over by your own bike if you've come off it, and being hit by your own bike, or, of course, by somebody else's bike. But I think what we need to avoid as much as possible is the fact that somebody could have a bike getting airborne by hitting a gravel trap and getting launched at a funny angle, or over a curb, or over, more to the point, being able to hit a barrier and bounce back into the circuit. That's the sort of thing they need to avoid, isn't it? Which, thankfully, they are more these days. All the AstroTurf has been removed now from these circuits as well. But yeah, it can never be too safe, can it? It can never, ever be too safe.
We know exactly what happened in Moto3 throughout the last few years, how many kids we lost. That's why FIM decided to raise the limit to 18 years. You have to be 18 years old to compete in Moto2, Moto3 and MotoGP, at least 18. So, it's not going to help. I don't know with whom I discussed it, but it's not going to help. I mean, I think it was Matt Oxley that we discussed this, who I discussed it with. It's just, when you look at tracks in Spain during the weeks, they are full of kids every single day. And you know it better than I do, because you probably visit these tracks. And the level of kids that are getting into, I don't know, Junior GP or Moto3 is so much higher. The time's going to be so much tighter. So we need to provide them with the most safety that we can provide them with, because they're going to go on the limit from lap 1 till the last lap, no matter what.
It's same in Italy as well. I remember having a free evening when we were at Misano last year for World Superbikes, and we went to go karting, which we hadn't done for a long time, and we didn't because the circuit in question was closed because it had been rented out by the VR46 Academy to bring a load of kids in to use mini bikes on the karting circuit. And this is the difference, isn't it? Once again, we are seeing, look, Bagnaia, Martin, Marquez was 1, 2, 3 in the sprint race. Then it was Bagnaia, Viñales, Bezzecchi, again, Italy and Spain in the main race. We had Pedro Acosta winning for Spain from Aaron Canet, Spain, Antonio Arbolino, Italy in the Moto2 Grand Prix. And what a win that was, by the way, for Acosta. And then, of course, pretty much a similar situation with Olgado and Munoz 1 and 2 in Moto3. Very quickly, Greg, and then we'll hear from Dave Neal about BSB. But I think that's something else they need to look at as well. The fact you can have the race winner, Daniel Olgado, slowing on the straight just after the checkered flag and then getting clipped by Joel Kelso from behind, who was removing a tear off. They've got to tighten up these safety measures, I think, because Kelso wasn't looking where he was going. Olgado was slowing down, celebrating with a pack of riders behind him. You just can't have any leeway, I think, there. You cannot accept situations after the race has ended on the straight. I know there's the crest of the hill there, but even so, I know it's easily done, but there needs to be some sort of measure put in place. I think that they have to maintain a certain speed, at least through the first sector, perhaps, after the checkered flag. Because that sort of thing just should not happen. It was totally avoidable.
Yeah, it was avoidable. The Olgado Kelso crash was a freak accident. I mean, in the slow motion pictures, you could see that Kelso is removing his tear off and he hits Olgado. It's crazy. It happened before. Not once, not twice. It happened many times before.
Yeah, and collisions we've seen in practice starts in the past, and that's been changed, hasn't it, since that they have dedicated zones. The riders at the front of the group have to go first. I guess, unfortunately, sometimes it does take a nasty accident to happen for a measure to be brought in. But, I guess that's how it goes. Just
going back to the safety problem, I think that it would be good to quote Loris Bass, who you already mentioned. Loris was in deep discussions because he has plenty of time healing his right leg after the accident with in Indonesia. So what Loris said on Twitter 4 days ago was, the problem is most of the tracks have a safety problem with the speed of the bikes at the moment, and I think it's correct. Many of the tracks were designed with the previous generation of bikes in mind. Right now, the bikes that are much faster, much smarter, with all the aerodynamic stuff, with the launch controls, with with all the systems that help to generate traction and grip, they are just too fast for many tracks. So the question is whether but the organizer can provide the riders with more safety, getting more air fences, stuff like this. So, yeah.
Yeah, good point. And I think this is something George Villegas has said as well in the interview he did with Michael Guy recently for MCN. Michael went to Switzerland to the FIM headquarters and chatted with Villegas, and he was talking more about the difference between superbikes and MotoGP. But I think the same applies. Do the viewers at home or trackside really care if the lap times are 4, 5, 6 seconds slower? It still looks scary fast. It still is scarily fast. But it would, as you've just said, I guess, Greg, increase some of the reaction times for people in these situations. And you'd like to think lessen the possibility of some of these nasty accidents.
Well, you have to think as a fan. Would you like to see Ford Sierra racing as a Formula One car?
Well, no, obviously, but that's going to look a lot slower, isn't it? I don't know. Does it matter? Does it matter if they lapped 5 seconds slower than they are now? Is it going to make any difference? If let's just say in a few years' time they're going 5 seconds quicker than they are now. Does that mean we haven't enjoyed what's happening do you know what I mean?
I mean, no one cares whether it's like 5 seconds faster, but the factories may lose interest in racing because they are using this as a development place. So we need to be really careful right now with what happened with Suzuki last year, not to lose another factory, both in superbikes and MotoGP, because right now with all the regulations that with the Euro 5.5, that I don't know whether in UK it applies, but Euro 5.5, it looks like it's gonna be so tight that 1000cc bikes are not gonna be sold as a street bike. they are not going to get the homologation. So we need to think about this. I mean, I was willing to talk to Jorge Viegas about this because it really needs attention, because I think that pretty soon the only company that's going to have a homologated 1000cc bike is going to be a Ducati.
I suppose with something that has changed in recent years is the Euro regs you've mentioned, the Euro 5 regs. You know, there's more strict speed limits now around Europe and around the world than there were, you know, a few years ago. And we have to take it all into account. We could probably have a whole podcast about that. But Greg, I'm going to try and keep this to under an hour. By the way, anyone listening, let me know. Do you prefer a shorter podcast, a longer podcast? Personally, I prefer about 45 minutes, but I'll try and keep this under an hour. Let's quickly listen to Dave Neal from the Off Track podcast. And Dave was at Donington Park braving out the conditions there on Saturday and Sunday last weekend for the latest BSB test to give us the latest there on the mood in the BSB paddock. Hello, David.
Hello, Gregory. You're absolutely right. It was the official RNG British Superbike test at Donington Park over the weekend. Shame the weather wasn't particularly great for fans or for the riders, to be fair. There was an awful lot of guys waiting to get out there and get out on their steeds. Some have been out to Spain, as we know, and some haven't. So there were people waiting to get on their bikes for the first time. Danny Buchan being one of them. Had a good catch-up with him over the weekend, and he's in a really good place. He's looking forward to the season on his Cinetic BMW. The mood in the camp is generally good. Everybody was happy to be back. It was the first test in the UK, as we said, and it just felt like the first day back at school. You know, when you had 6 weeks off at big school, and then you go back and everybody was pleased to see each other. Where have you been? How you've been? What you've been doing? So good to be back. Hey, looking forward to the season. It was, despite the weather, the cold wind, it was genuinely really good to be back at a British Superbike circuit and to see all the people involved. The track's been resurfaced at Donington Park. The whole circuit's been resurfaced with new asphalt. The general feedback is it's grippy, it's good. One or two saying it's still holding a little bit of water in places, which is obvious with new tarmac. That happens regularly and just till the oils come out of it. So it is relatively fresh. But by the time we go back there at the end of May, it will be, I think, something a little bit special. But no, it was enjoyable. It was good to get everybody back in one place. Everybody looks hungry. Everybody looks strong. As far as I remember, nobody's carrying any injuries. Everybody's coming into the season chomping at the bit to get going in 2 weeks' time. It's going to be really, really exciting season, and I can't wait for it to get started.
And Dave, plenty coming up for you as well, of course, with the Off Track podcast. As you've been telling me, you've got a show out at the moment, the latest show. You've got Max Cook, Ryan Vickers, Jack Scott, Charlie Nesbitt, Liam Dells and Danny Buchan all on one podcast. And then next week, there'll be an interview with Dave and Dan Linfoot. There's a Simon Buckmaster interview coming up soon as well. But also, alongside the Dan Linfoot interview next week, there is a season preview for BSB 2023. Brand new format, 3 different point systems across the season. And Dave will be joined by his co-host there, Ben Curry. In terms of the actual timings and who was quickest, Dave, in the Donington test, it seems as though now with Brad Ray off in World Superbikes, it's his former teammate who's really making the running off the back of the previous test in Navarra as well.
You're absolutely right. It was Kyle Ryde that was fastest again on the Lamy OMG Racing Yamaha. He's really taken to the challenge this season after sort of sitting in the shadow of Brad Ray last season as the British Superbike champion. Kyle's under no illusion of what he's got to do this year, and just to sit and have a chat with him and get the lowdown on where he's been and what he's been doing over the winter with his personal manager, Tommy Hill, he's in a really good place. So that's 2 tests he's topped by a considerable margin. He's only 2/10 under the lap record this weekend in the only session that he went out in. I know it's one of his favourite circuits, but still, you've got to pedal it round, haven't you? The rest of the crew, everybody looking really good. Josh Brooks was fast. He went out. He was second fastest. Danny Buchan third fastest. Not everybody went out because there's only 2 weeks between the test and the start of the season. And, you know, one cracked collarbone, one scaphoid, something like that can really put paid to the start of the season. So it was a shame about the weather, but there's another test coming up Tuesday and Wednesday. Down at Silverstone. It's media day on the Monday, test Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we're back there the following Thursday. So that will show us a little bit more. Hopefully the weather will stay dry. It might be a little bit windy being an ex-airfield as it usually is as well, you know. But I think that will show us a little bit more of who's, you know, looking where for the start of the season. Andy Irwin on the Honda's going to look good. Hickey. There isn't really any apart from testing with Kyle, he's been the outstanding individual from testing, but you never know what parts other people are looking at. You don't know what they're testing. You don't know what they're trying to develop ahead of the season. Kyle's teammate, Ryan Vickers, he'll be strong. He had an off in Navarra, injured his knee and his wrist, but he's fully fit now. He's turned a couple of laps while we were at Donington, but he's looking forward to Silverstone because that's ultimately where we're racing the week after. So it's really going to show after, probably tea time on Wednesday, we'll really find out just what the lie of the land could be for Silverstone the week after. I really can't wait. I'm so looking forward to it. Congratulations on the new podcast. I can't wait to hear more episodes, mate.
Thank you very much indeed. That was Dave Neal there. Thanks again for that, David. And thanks also to Greg Jędrzejewski. Have I got it right this time, Greg?
Yeah, perfect.
Yes, finally. It took about 4 attempts, but we got there in the end. Just tell us, who are you on Twitter and what are your predictions for Argentina MotoGP this weekend?
At Grzegorz _GP. Regarding the Argentina, I'm looking forward to proper racing on Saturday and on Sunday, and hopefully that HRC is gonna think about better ways for PR action rather than applying the penalty that Marc received.
Nicely said. Let's see how that pans out. There's a lot of drama to come, I think. Also, everyone, I'll be at the World Superbike Test. I'm going to pop into the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya on Friday. So let's see what's happening there as well. And we'll talk more about that perhaps. So we've got Silverstone BSB to discuss with the test there and Catalunya testing and, of course, Argentina MotoGP. So, Greg, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure. We will chat again very soon indeed. But we've been talking away with Greg about MotoGP 2023, a chaotic start. And let's see what happens in Argentina.